Sean, it came out on Friday from a good friend of the show, Ross Dellinger of Yahoo Sports, reported that the Power Conference commissioners were meeting once again to advance the possibility of the college football playoff expanding to 16 teams. Now, you and I have had a lot of conversations about this. I think that many could argue that it is bad for the sport. I think that many could argue that it provides an intriguing new layer. I will not go as far as to say that I think that this kills things. This completely ruins and creates the downfall of the expectations of what is competitive postseason football. But I set up this conversation by saying I am intrigued by the 16-team playoff because I think that with the obnoxious and uninteresting nature of the bowl season, we need something like this.
Yeah, bowls have gotten real rough. I am not going to be, surprisingly, Mr. Doom and Gloom here because it was kind of a fact when they expanded to 12 that there was going to be another expansion. You gave an inch, and then subsequently, oh, look, it's the people that take literally miles and miles and miles when given an inch. Oh, are they back to take another mile? Of course they are. It's their nature. I'm not going to be the frog complaining about the snake or scorpion or whatever the vicious predator it is that I'm riding on its back to get to safety. I will not complain about it because it's in the decision maker's nature to make money and to get more eyes on the product and to build things out to be bigger, better. It's what America does. So inherently, I have no issue with it, but it just reeks of greed. It reeks of too many hands in the pot trying to pull puppet strings. Like that's just where it reeks of.
That is the premise that I understand that is constantly brought up, and it's going to be the one that I get into with Blake in about 2 hours. Mm-hmm. Yes, we can't sit here and pretend that there is not some sort of greed involved. We cannot pretend that there is not some motivation behind the premise that's being presented. The schools want more money. The schools want more money to now be able to pay the players that they are going to be required to pay very, very soon once revenue sharing comes into the fold.
Right.
There are a lot of things that need to change and happen. I also think what is really stupid and what I think is going to be a big discussion point with this is why the hell didn't we just go right to 16? Well, that's not how college sports works. We don't have the same layer of – it's not like the NFL where they have so many resources to properly analyze and determine if they want to make a decision. And then they have to go to the NFLPA to negotiate those changes that happen. The college landscape needs to test things for whatever stupid reason. So this was all part of the process. We had to test things. And to talk about the greed, naturally we were going to it's going to influence everything. And I think that if we spend so much time griping about the decision makers are so greedy, it robs us of the joy of actually watching the games. And I think if we pay more attention to what is happening on the field, what is going to happen on the field in the 16-team playoff. If you want to be negative and state these games are going to suck, the teams that are 15, 16, 14, 13 are going to be shit. They don't belong in the mix. They're just going to get wiped by whoever they play. I argue that this year with 12 teams was not enough because we had a lot of bad teams that were facing teams that were good enough to compete for national titles. We create a filter system. We allow the mediocre teams that are in the 16-team playoff to play one another in order to advance. We get exciting, interesting first-round games. The first-round games will be better. And just like this year, Sean, the second-round games will also be competitive. That's what we noticed. Once the filtering happened, we got really good games with Arizona State, Texas that was unexpectedly good. We got to see Notre Dame square off with Georgia, and Boise State versus Penn State was a little interesting for like a quarter. But the filtering system is something that we need.
I'm fine with it. I just thought I loved the 12-team playoff last year. I loved it. I thought it was a great product and system that was put out. You had great representation from all the different paths of college football. The team that should have won. And we made that prediction in July of who should have won, Ohio State. And we both, I think we had Ohio State, Georgia in the championship. I picked Ohio State, you picked Georgia, but no one is going to look back on that and say, wow, Ohio State just lucked their way into it. And going into the 12-team playoff last year, there were only about 4 teams that could really do it. So expanding out to 16, I'm cool with. If that means we get to see more representation from other, I'd take another G5 team. I'd take different.
No.
I don't need that though. I don't need more shit SEC teams. I don't.
I would rather have more shit SEC teams.
What do you like about because if they're trying to make this the next March Madness, which they're going to try to do, the only thing anyone ever cares about.
Why would we trot out?
Because it's the only thing anyone really care about is the upset. Is anything?
But the upset doesn't happen in football.
Tell that to App State and Michigan. Tell that to Northern Illinois. Tell that to Northern Illinois, Notre Dame.
No.
The upset doesn't happen. Are you kidding me?
Those upsets happen during the regular season. We can dig into the history of the App State Michigan game. We can dig into what happened this year with Northern Illinois and Notre Dame. They overlooked their opponents because it was the beginning of the season. That is why those upsets happened. Wait. When we saw the degree of preparation that Penn State put into playing SMU, they fucking smoked them. They brutally murdered them on the field.
They were a favorite. Good.
But I don't want games I don't want G5 teams. That is the big.
Then why do you? Now I'm back in it. Now I'm back at the same goddamn argument. Why do you play the game, the EA Sports college football game with G5 teams? Then why do you?
That's not real life. That's a video game.
Yeah, but why do you but inherently, why do you choose a G5 team? Why do you do it?
I'm not answering this question.
No, it's because you want to upset. It's because you want to upset.
No, because it's just a fun, different team to use.
Oh, it's a fun, different team, but we don't want to see a fun, different team.
Those teams in real life do not have the resources to compete on the field with the elite premier brands in the sport. The whole premise of creating this expanded playoff
doesn't have the resources that Duke has, but they can knock them out in the first round of March
basketball.
Madness.
You and I both know that there's a difference between basketball and football.
Yeah, but in the first 32 games of the tournament, Joe, it's not all chalk. Even though 90% of the favorites win, you still have an upset, and that's the only thing people care about when it comes to tournaments.
We can't add a G5. Wait, hold on. The March Madness tournament this year was one of the most competitive that we've ever had because all the shit bad teams that normally pull off the upsets, there is a talent gap bigger than any other, which is also true.
I thought it was the most boring March Madness tournament I think I made.
I thought that it was
tremendously boring.
8 and beyond, actually Sweet 16 and beyond was some of the best basketball that I was actually locked in and paying attention to.
Where was the story? What was it?
Florida and Houston making as far as they did. Cooper Flag getting knocked off. Nobody would have. If somebody got knocked off earlier, Cooper Flag and Duke would have just ran to a title, and we would have watched them blow the doors off of some team that didn't belong being there.
Look, when you get EA Sports 26 college football,
it's not
just play with Ole Miss. Just play with Ole Miss.
It's not.
That's all I'm asking.
Video game. Fine, I'll play with Ole Miss.
I'm just saying there's no consistency to your arguments if what you're doing
that's not real life, though. There is consistency to my argument.
Because you're understanding why you use those, why they're good.
That's not real life. That's not real life. You can't just put those teams.
Yeah, and you're not playing in the games or coaching them, so it's not
watching
really.
I'm analyzing them. I'm breaking them down.
It's not really real life that you're in. You're watching and consuming and reacting to it and analyzing.
But exactly, though, I would want the product that is out there to be entertaining to watch. I can pull off an upset with a G5 team because I'm the one controlling the team. That's what makes it more entertaining. It makes it more challenging. An upset does not occur. We can't just create opportunities for upsets that won't happen.
I just don't know how we're already pre-apologizing for the SEC when they were tremendously bad last year as a conference.
I don't think they were tremendously
for their
bad.
standards. For their standards,
they were underwhelming per their standards. But the 7th, 8th best SEC team dominates the second best G5 team.
But why do you reward that if it's a sport that encompasses over 200 schools?
Why
are we rewarding the 8th best in a conference?
Who was the second best G5 team
this past year?
Yeah, who would you say it was?
SMU. Or Tulane. I know SMU is P4 now.
Tulane lost to Army in their conference championship game. Army got dominated by Notre Dame, who went to a national championship. You would need, and this is the whole premise, what's the word I'm looking for? The at-large bid if a G5 has a resume that is so impressive, Cincinnati level impressive, a Boise State level of impressive at least.
Oh, I didn't know. I thought it was unimpressive last year.
If it was a 16-team field, they would have arguably have been in the mix. They had a Heisman Trophy candidate. If it was a 16-team field, I would have had no problem with it. Them being a 4 seed was where the issue came from.
I didn't agree with that.
Okay. What I'm trying to say here, though, is that you need to have and you need to prove to get in. You shouldn't just slot another G5 team in just because we need to include 2 of them.
I would happily do that. I would happily do that than watch a team that really, if they are so good, then leave the SEC and win in the G5 and be that dominant team elsewhere. So you don't have to be sitting at, we were the 7th best in the SEC, but we can't really crack in. Change conferences and go dominate. Then you get an easier path in if you're such a good team. I don't know why Mississippi State hasn't done that.
Wouldn't you have agreed?
Go join the American.
Because they don't want to win the American. They want to retain the prestige of being in the SEC. Wouldn't you? Wouldn't you agree that the college football playoff wouldn't have been more interesting with Lenore Sellers in it in a 16-team field instead of watching Army try and run the triple option?
They wouldn't have done it. They wouldn't have won the national championship.
They wouldn't have won the national championship, but the first round game that they would have played would have been Illinois, South Carolina is an example of a game that we would get in the first round. That was good fucking game.
Yeah, that was good.
It was the Cheez-It Bowl.
Yeah, that was great. That was a good game. One of them. But if we're going to have realistically, like we will this year, about 4 or 5 teams that can really make a run for it, that are genuinely national championship quality teams, why are the other 11 dipshit teams not just going to be for fun? Why can't we have that be fun? Because realistically,
we're just throwing teams in for fun. That's what we're doing.
Yeah, it's sports. It's college football. It's supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be, hey, look at this fun team that represents a different look at the sport that isn't just the SEC or Big Ten. Like that. That should be rewarded more. I don't think. But last year, you weren't going to see me begging to have another Big 12 team in there because the Big 12 was inadequate for college football playoff standards. It won rep. That's fine. They had enough that year. But the SEC is different than the Big 12 because their 5th best team is better than the Big 12 5th best team.
But that's not what we're talking about here, though. The premise of like if we have if we have 2 1-loss Big 12 teams and a 3-loss SEC team, I am always going to fight for that Big 12 team or that ACC team to get in over the SEC team. That is where I will fight for. But when I've got Tulane,
you fought hard for Clemson last year, all through the year.
Well, Clemson wasn't a very good team last year. They only got in because they won the ACC. The ACC was talking about a shit conference last year. The whole ACC was bad. Talking about Tulane, who couldn't even compete on the field with Florida in the bowl game that they played in. That was a real prove-it opportunity. That's what the product would look like. That's what we get.
You're quoting their bowl game?
Yes.
No, bowl games don't count. Yeah, nobody plays. Nobody plays.
Oh my,
everyone's taking them off. It's a bowl game. It's an exhibition. Come on, be real. Be real.
That's the only context that we have of Tulane, what they did in the postseason.
I don't need more SEC. I want more fun college football.
More fun. Okay, so a 50-0 or a 50-15 win is fun for you.
More fun for me because I know in that first quarter is going to be way more fun. Thinking that there's a shot, not thinking that it could happen. That's the mistake.
That is insane logic.
Tell that to people that play the lottery. There's more of them than football fans in the nation.
You wouldn't rather be entertained.
They're close though.
You wouldn't rather be entertained by Illinois, South Carolina, where it was a close game going into the fourth quarter, and Illinois ran the ball and they ran it down, and then that was how they closed the game out. The unexpected.
You like that game because there were coaches fighting in it.
That's good. That's fun. I did like that game. You don't think that, say theoretically, Florida versus Tulane ended up being a playoff game? You think that Billy Napier is really going to be shit talking Summerall, the head coach? Or no, is Summerall the head coach? Regardless, he's not going to. It's going to be a pity party. It's going to be like, oh, okay, yeah, we should probably start stopping the score.
It is Summerall. Look at you, ball knower.
I don't know. I don't agree with this. I don't know.
That's fine. We consume the sport differently. We do. It's not so. I didn't come into this conversation thinking, oh, well, Joe's stance has changed, and I don't think that you came in thinking Sean's stance has changed on it. I consume it differently. I think that different parts of football are more fun than other parts of football, and I don't lick the boots of the SEC. Not saying that you do. I'm not saying that you do, but I am not a bootlicker when it comes, because I'm, again, new age college football fan. I am a overwhelming casual enjoyer of college football.